So I'm here with Joe from Rhotic Media and Sammy from London South Bank University. And it would be great if you could tell us a little bit about yourselves, who you are and what you do.
Sure, I'll go first. I'm Sammy from London South Bank University Group, and I'm the Group Director for Apprenticeships. So I've started at LSBU in 2018, and then in 2019 we created a group of technical education providers that includes 2 schools and a college. So I'm now responsible for the central apprenticeship team that deals with apprenticeships from level 2 to level 7. Prior to that, I worked in further education since 2006, always in skills and training and apprenticeships, because obviously apprenticeships existed in lower levels for a very long time. My education is completely different. So I did my degree in biomedical science, and then I applied to do, for a job, and they said, come back when you've got some experience, because I wanted to do medical sales. I thought at the time I was very young, and I saw this advert, and you get a car, you get a mobile phone. At the time, mobile phones were like something novel. So I found a job at a college working in the business development team, and it really enjoyed working with employers, working with people in the college, etc. So that's how I started my journey in education. It was by accident. And like Joe, I completed an MBA in 2016. So it was really insightful. I found it very interesting because I managed to translate some of my knowledge into actual practical applications into education and sales and management. So it was a great experience. That's me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. And Joe?
I'm Joe, founder and CEO of Rhotic Media, a content agency which started back in 2018. I think aside from the fact that we're often known for the work we do in financial journalism and financial content, obviously we've in recent years become quite well known for the degree apprenticeship program that we offer as well. So hence why we're here today.
Yeah. All right. So I really want to get back to basics. I talked to somebody the other day at a school governors meeting about this podcast series, and I could tell that his perception was still that apprenticeships are for trades. So I'd really love it if we could understand what exactly is a degree apprenticeship.
So I can start, and Joe can correct me if I'm wrong. But so an apprenticeship, the bottom line is a job with training. And in 2016, the government reformed the apprenticeship system. So where in the past the apprenticeship used to be mainly focused on things like plumbing, electrical, carpentry and joinery, some business administration, etc., they've widened it, and they basically made the system employer-led. So they created the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. They created employer groups that will look at skills shortages in a particular sector or profession. And these employers have to be representative of that sector. So the minimum is like 10 employers, have to be SMEs and large. They come together. They propose an apprenticeship standard. That standard could be at level 7, so a master's level, or level 6 degree level, etc. And they will develop that apprenticeship based on the skills, the knowledge, the behaviors they expect from a professional in that sector. And then the government will go through an approval process with them, and once it's approved, they will assign funding to that apprenticeship, and providers like ourselves will use that document to build an academic program that will meet the requirements of the employers. And these apprenticeships get reviewed every 3 to 4 years by the employers to make sure they're still relevant, still required by that sector. So in theory, the apprenticeships should be the best possible way for someone to develop the skills, because they've been developed by employers, and they should be current at all times. The additional thing with the degree apprenticeships, obviously, is that they have the same degree as the full-time degree embedded within the apprenticeship itself. The apprentice doesn't have to pay anything towards their qualification. And in fact, they get paid a salary. to do that degree qualification. And at the end of it, most of these apprenticeships are linked to professional body and professional standards. So they will become registered with a professional body, therefore enhancing the employability, enhancing also the return on investment for the employer. Because if I was an employer and I have someone who's a chartered manager or a registered digital marketeer, for example, I can potentially charge my client more for their time at the end of their apprenticeship. So it's a win-win for everybody involved in the situation, the training providers, employers and apprentices.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Sammy.
Okay, so what kind of company can employ a degree apprentice?
In my view, any company that can support an employee can employ an apprentice. I mean, we've got roughly around 1,000 companies that we work with. 8% of them pay into what we call the apprenticeship levy, and that's a sign whether the company is largish or not. If you pay the apprenticeship levy, you have a wage bill which is more than £3 million a year. And that roughly translates to having something like 250 employees within the business also, depending on the average pay. So 20% of the employers that we work with do not pay that levy, so therefore they have less than 250 employees. There's a big proportion of them, especially in sectors like architecture, which is traditionally very small. You've got 10 employees in a practice, but they do a lot of big projects. So we've got employees who have 5 employees in the company who are taking part. The crucial thing is apprentices will need support and guidance, especially in the first few months of their employment. If they are school leavers or college leavers, somebody who's 18, at the start, this might be the first job. And we always have this conversation with employers and we say, look, it's best for us not to start something that's ultimately going to fail because you don't have the capacity to support this individual. It's not like you employ an apprentice and you leave them to one corner and say, get on with the job. You will need to have, ideally, a line manager, ideally a mentor that will work with them and support them on a regular basis. So we try and support employers in that understanding, and in some cases we'll say, well, apprenticeships is not the right solution for your business. You will need to maybe grow your business a little bit more, then you can take an apprentice. And we have seen it work very well in some companies where they will employ an apprentice. In 2 years' time, they will employ another apprentice, and the first apprentice is the mentor of the second apprentice, because they know the systems of the processes in that company. So any employer can take part, but obviously the crucial thing is, can they provide the support required by the apprentice?
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
That's absolutely right, Sammy. I think just to chime in on our experience along exactly the same as you described. It's evolved, I'd say, where we didn't know what to expect when we took our first apprentice on. We knew that we needed training. We knew that we needed that to be rooted in the workplace. So we knew what was sold, if you like, as the sort of headline of what an apprentice is. But then when you start to dig into it, what you said about having the support for on-the-job training, making sure that obviously we now have rotations where every 6 months the apprentice gets moved on to another body of work, making sure that those rotations align with the knowledge, skills and behaviours that they're working towards on the academic side. So we have regular portfolio reviews where we sit down with our apprentices and say, okay, from the work that you've been working on, how does that check off things that will go towards your portfolio submission, that work with the KSBs that you're supposed to be hitting in order to meet your course. And then towards the end of their apprenticeship, in addition to those regular check-ins as well, we do preparation for endpoint assessment and going through Gateway. And as you say, like someone who's been through an apprenticeship can do that. So it may well be someone who's gone through the full apprenticeship, or it may well be someone who is just a few years ahead, who can give some direction as to what to expect. But I really do believe that with a bit of thought, an apprenticeship program can be offered by a business of any size, but they do need to recognise that there is a time commitment that's necessary to have the best outcome, both for the apprentice and for the business as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds as though it's industry agnostic, company size agnostic, as long as an apprentice can be set up for success and with support. Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yeah, and there is a lot of support available to apprentices, and like Joe mentioned, everyone in the sector has been evolving their understanding and the practice. So we've got new apprenticeship systems and tools that we use. We've got new processes. We continuously look at what we do at every stage of the journey: the onboarding, the application, on-program support. Listen to the feedback and learn from mistakes and successes to enhance that. So it's although the standard is there and it's one standard, the journey itself is ever evolving depending on what's going on in the sector. And I think it's really exciting times because the technology is moving really fast, and we're looking at how we can use automation, AI to enhance that journey, enhance the reporting to employers, make sure that they have visibility of the apprentice progress at every single point of that journey, because it's a three-way relationship, and that communication is really essential.
Yeah, thank you. So how does it work? Let's say I'm an employer and I'm thinking of taking on an apprentice. How is it funded? You mentioned the apprenticeship levy, for example. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So the apprenticeship levy is essentially a government tax that was introduced in 2016-17. Any employer or any business that has a wage bill which is more than £3 million a year have to pay 0.5% towards the apprenticeship levy. Now, the apprenticeship levy, that money is ring-fenced to be spent on apprenticeships. If the employer doesn't spend that over in 24 months, then that will get taken by the Treasury and, in theory, spent on the non-levy paying employers and other expenses of the apprenticeship system. So the employers will pay the apprenticeship levy. The funding pays, that levy will pay 100% of that cost of the apprenticeship. If you don't pay, if the employer doesn't pay the apprenticeship levy, now it gets a little bit complicated because of the size, but there is a category of employers who don't pay the apprenticeship levy, have to contribute 5% of that cost of the apprenticeship training. Then there's another category where they have less than 50 employees, and they will the government will fund 100% of the apprenticeship training cost. Furthermore, if an employer recruits an apprentice who is under 19 at the start of their apprenticeship, they will get an incentive payment, which is £1,000 for the recruitment of that young apprentice to their business.
Yeah. That makes sense. Thank you. So even if you don't pay into the apprenticeship levy, you can still benefit from the apprenticeship funding scheme. Yes.
And this is one of the great misconceptions, because I have personally spoken to businesses in the past, and they said, we can't take part in the apprenticeship scheme. I said, why? They said, because we don't pay the apprenticeship levy. And I said to them, that's not, you don't need to be paid to the levy to be part of it. And it's one of the things, because of the number of apprentices that we have, I am on different groups like the provider network that the ESFA, the funding body, has. And we I feedback some of these things. And I said, one of the biggest things that the government needs to do is to support small SMEs, small employers more. And I think there's a lot of work that's been happening at the moment. For example, they're trying to allow more flexibilities to levy-paying employers to transfer more of their levy to non-levy employers, so they can pay for that. They're also looking at setting up expert like panels and expert support services for SMEs to guide through the process, because it's a little bit complex. You need to go link the payroll system to the apprenticeship system, etc., etc. And that's the biggest thing that I always say. when I speak to small employers, especially the micro employers, they say, would love to take an apprentice, but I don't have time to spend on setting up the scheme.
Yeah.
And this is what we have been lobbying, colleagues in Department of Education Skills Funding Agency to try and do. And I think they are taking steps to minimize the administration, the complexity of the system.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure I'd call it a warning, but it's one thing that employers, certainly small businesses like us, need to be aware of when they do it for the first time. Is you would think that all of the information that you need and all the administration is in one place, and it isn't. So that all of the information that you need, and the onboarding and the financing and all of the administration that goes through onboarding an individual, there are 2 government platforms that you need to interact with. They're also, depending on the provider, you'll have to work with the provider's onboarding as well, whether that's manual, whether it's a central hub. To be fair to LSBU, your onboarding is very slick. But we've worked with other institutions where we've had to do a lot of the heavy lifting on the paperwork, and it can be a point where I can see some companies would look at that and go that it's just taking too long. I'm going to just not do it. And I think, I'd really encourage people to get past that, because once you've done it once, you know what the different sort of hurdles are, and it becomes very, very easy quickly when you're repeating it again and again. But the first time that we did it, we did see like, oh, okay, so we've got to register here, we've got to register for our payments here, we've got to click that we've had interactions with both the apprentice and the educational institution. Then you have to take the codes. And, there's lots of things which you're looking at and going, hang on, I've got to integrate that with my payroll system. Otherwise, you might end up paying additional national insurance that you didn't have to. There's a lot of considerations. Once you've done it once, the rewards are enormous, as we've discussed previously.
Yeah. All right. Great. Thank you. And so you've decided you want to take an apprentice. You know how you're going to get funded. So how do you then choose the education provider? How does that work?
Well, so before we decided to take our very first apprentice, we did a lot of groundwork. So I think we contacted something like 35 institutions that were offering the relevant standard at the time. So obviously that's developed massively now. And we did it all the old-fashioned way, knocking on doors and saying, can I have a conversation? Which took up a lot of time. But it was a very useful exercise, because you really got to understand that the way that these standards are delivered are different by all the different institutions. So while the apprentice standard might be the same, the way they're taught, the way that the skills and behaviours are aligned with what you're doing as the employer are interpreted by the educational institution can be different as well. And there will be apprentice standards which you look at and you think, well, that's great, because that's applicable to a really wide area, which when you actually drill down into it, is not as suitable as one which looks like it's much more specific, but actually they cover off a lot of that general sort of foundation stuff in year one, which again is something that we find works really well for us. So I guess what I'm saying is it's really important to clear some time to do a bit of shopping around. There are institutions out there you can pay to do that for you, but I'd recommend that the company does it themselves, because you'll find that it works really well. And also, don't be afraid to change provider. So we've worked with 5 different apprenticeship providers so far, which for a business that's only 6 years old is, not bad. And I'm pleased to say that in LSBU we found a partner that we really trust. They really know how to deliver these programs. But sadly, that isn't the case for every institution. So I would really spend some time getting to know what the support is for the apprentice and what the support is for the employer, because they do vary enormously.
Thank you, Joe. And I would just want to add something. obviously I'm LSBU, but I would say to employers there are things that they can look at when they're doing that research. So if employers can Google find an apprenticeship training provider, a government website will come up, and you can go and look by the apprenticeship standard, and it'll give you like a traffic light kind of system for the provider. It'll give you a list whether they deliver in person, online, in the workplace. You can click at each provider. You'll see how many reviews they've received officially from employers, how they rate the provider by different areas, how many reviews they've received from apprentices, and how the apprentices rated that provider by different areas. Employers can also look at something called Rate My Apprenticeships, which is another award category, which is getting bigger and bigger. It's been around for I think 4 or 5 years now. And again, they ask the apprentices independently about 10 different questions about the experience, both with the provider and at the employer premises. So, and they give detailed feedback. So again, employers can look at the specific standards there, and they can look at what apprentices are saying about their experience. So I think I agree with Joe. They need to do shopping around, need to go and speak to the employers, potentially ask to visit their facilities, meet the people who lead these programs directly, not just the apprenticeship teams, but the people who actually manage these courses and have the academic expertise. Because obviously it's crucial that that standard, like Joe said, meets the requirements of the business and the job that the business is looking to fill and develop.
Yeah. And to your point, it is that triangular partnership, and you have to have done your due diligence and feel confident that they are a trusted partner. Yeah. Okay. So I've decided I'm doing it. I know how to get funded. I've chosen my education provider. How do I find someone to come and do this apprenticeship?
Well, for us, we do a two-pronged approach typically, and we've always taken this approach, irrespective of the education partner that we work with. We always advertise in a traditional format, so we might use job recruitment sites. We use our own careers site that we've got on the website, and we will look to some of the milk round places where people might look for sort of post-18 education as well, where they have a job board. We'll try to post that there. But we've always used the services when offered of the education and training provider as well, because sometimes they have a system where they can help with recruitment. And I'll let Sammy speak about this, because I know LSBU's is very, very good. So, Sammy?
Yes, so we every year we work with employers to fill about 100 to 200 different apprenticeship vacancies, especially between the period of April to July, before September, at the start of the academic year. And employers have different approaches. So some of them will say, this is the apprenticeship that we are going to do, we want to do. Can you go and advertise it on our behalf on the national system? So find an apprenticeship vacancy, which is got, I think last year the government said 1 million people applied for jobs through that portal.
Brilliant.
And some of the, because I see some of these applications, sometimes for one particular apprenticeship, depending on the pay and the sector, you can get up to 400 applications for one job.
Wow.
So some employers will say, advertise on our behalf, shortlist on our behalf, and send us the best 20 that meet the entry criteria, they meet our requirements. So we do that, and some other employers will say, we would like ideally the apprentices to apply via our own system. So what we do in that case is we still list it on the National Apprenticeship system, but with a link leading to the employer's portal. So that job is tracked both by the government and by the employer. In addition to that, what we do as a provider is we have very active social media accounts in Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn, and others, and Facebook. We do share these vacancies regularly. We also share the vacancies with, regardless of where they're advertised. If they are committed with us, we will share them with the colleges that are part of a group, the schools are part of a group, but also have a network of our local authorities as well. They have employment agencies. We work with lots of community organizations that work with people who are unemployed, needs, for example. We share all these vacancies with them. We work with the pre-apprenticeship provider network, so they support people who want to do an apprenticeship as well. So we try and market the apprenticeships as much as possible to our wide network of partners, because we want to ensure there is diversity coming through, there is equality in the situation, and that people are aware of these opportunities that are available to them.
Yeah. Great. That's helpful. Okay, so I'm really curious. We've talked about some of the things, the administration, the lack of awareness, or feeling like they can't apply because the funding isn't available for them. But when you talk to employers who are saying not for us right now, why are they saying no if they're saying no to apprenticeships?
So from my experience, especially the recent experience and the feedback I get from my colleagues in the team, is economic uncertainty is a big part of the minute. So if obviously part of the funding rules is that we have to be satisfied that this employer is committed to the end of the apprenticeship. Yeah. So part of the things we say to them, and some of these degree apprenticeships can last up to 5 to 6 years. We say to the employer, in your best estimate, your best intentions, are you able to support an apprentice for 5 or 6 years until they complete? Some of the employers now are saying, well, I'm not so sure, the business is like 50-50 at the minute, etc., and we can't invest in new staff. So that's one category of employers, and obviously we can't, as a responsible provider, sign up someone who we'd know there's a high scenario of they will lose their job in 2 years' time. So that's some of the employers. The other category I spoke about before, which are the ones who don't feel they have the infrastructure to support an apprenticeship journey. Now we try and help them and say, look, it's not as difficult as you may seem. We will even sit with them and go and do all the registrations with them to make sure that they get through that. But if they, if they're not able to physically manage someone, then obviously that's a challenge. There are some other employers who are in very niche markets where they may not have a suitable apprenticeship available to them, and that's obviously is an issue with some employers. Some employers have had bad experiences in the past that we speak to, and it's a kind of a journey to bring them back into the skills system. So there's a combination. There isn't one kind of reason why employers are not engaged. The majority, I have to say, when you speak to them and explain to them, they do engage with it. And in some cases, in fact, it becomes finding the right fit for the business is the challenge, rather than finding the business itself.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work for an organisation and we considered this as an option, but ended up going for an alternative option. But for us, I have to say, the perception at the time was that, my goodness, this will take a lot of time to get things set up, and we don't have any capacity to dedicate to that. So it's great to know that in a partner like LSBU, there is really a hand-holding through that process.
Yeah, and I think it's the picture is always evolving. So, for example, you mentioned your organization, and I'm going to take a guess and say, it falls under the creative sector. It's one of these sectors where there is a lot of small companies. There's a lot of employment via contracting, which makes it a little bit difficult because, as an apprentice has to be employed, etc., for minimum duration and so on. But we have managed to work with some of the leading businesses within the sector. So currently we do an apprenticeship in post-production, for example, technician at LSBU. We're introducing in September post-production engineer, which is the higher level. We're introducing video and an audio technician apprenticeship. And the sector itself didn't have many apprenticeships in the past, but now the number is growing and we're looking at more and more. So it's that journey of convincing the leading employers and the sector bodies to engage with that. Once you get them engaged, then you'll see like a flurry of businesses doing it.
Classic FOMO.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So why should employers get involved in apprenticeships? Talk to us about the benefits.
Well, for me, it's we've now been doing it long enough that we can start to see the long-term benefits. And again, like the markets that we serve, financial services, so that's capital markets, personal finance, and media organisations that are active in finance. So there has been now for some years talk about sustainability. Well, it doesn't get more sustainable than if you're looking at the trajectory of the long-term career path of an individual and the influence that long-term employment is going to have on the corporate culture. We are seeing the benefits, positive benefits of having apprentices that have worked with the business, that have come through the different parts of their training. They've been rotated around the business, so they've learned different skills in different departments. So we've got 2 individuals who have taken part in this series who are coming to the end of their 3rd year at the moment. And they have had a significant impact, not just in terms of how we work, because they will spot innovation opportunities which the leadership team just won't, because they are being rotated at the ground operational level at every part of the business. So that is useful in itself. But it brings together sort of groups of thinking from all the different departments through the learning. So when you start to think, for instance, about how you work with clients to get better outcomes, they will have meaningful and tangible inputs, which not only lead to better outcomes for your clients, which obviously is great because they stay with you for longer and they'll be happier to work with you again, but also improves for us. It improves your margin as well, because they've seen ways that are inefficient because they've done it. And on their training, they've been told what to look for on the education side. And then when they apply that, they can see instances where that isn't happening. And then they can feed that back with sort of one-to-ones and catch-ups and team development meetings. So there is a commercial impact, which is easy to track, I'd say, once you sort of go past the initial sort of 18-month period, but certainly as you start to get at the 3-year period. And then there's also the sort of non-financial, how it impacts innovation and improvement in business.
Yeah,
thank you. And Sammy, for you?
I think Joe has covered all the points. I think I couldn't have put it in a better than Joe, because obviously the employer. But I have an apprentice or 3 apprentices in my team myself. And,
I love that.
The impact. Yes. Well, I can't be leading an apprenticeship team, asking employers to invest in apprenticeship. I don't have apprentices myself.
Yeah.
But it was fantastic to have apprentices in the team because you see the innovation, the ideas they bring into the business, the enthusiasm they bring. Yesterday I got an email from one of them with a long list of new ideas they thought of about how to work with our business clients and how to make their journey better. So all of these things are really important. And I think in any sector, if you have if you have the right kind of apprentice in your business, you will see these benefits coming through, which will lead, like Joe said, better margins, better, more satisfied clients and customers, therefore more sustained business in the future. So I think for me, that's a really crucial thing for businesses. The other thing is around the increase of diversity into the business as well. Especially in London, we very diverse communities here, and a lot of businesses work with London communities. And obviously, if you have a workforce that reflects the local community or the community that you serve, you are better able to serve them, better able to actually also increase your margins because you talk their language, you speak to them, and understand what makes them tick. Therefore, you may have more profits and so on. The other thing I think is important as well is that if you employ a normal trainee, obviously all the support is down to you as an employer. If you employ an apprentice, then there is a formal framework of support and training that includes also the training provider. So big part of my role here is to ensure that things like the progress reviews are happening with the apprentices and employers, which are really crucial to make sure the apprentice is on track. We have a specialist team that looks at the apprentice retention and achievement and the outcomes in exams and what we can do to improve. So all of that is only available through the apprenticeship framework because there is a commitment by providers and a legal obligation for them to offer that additional support. So I think that also helps to make it easier for the employer to manage and navigate and also provide more benefits to them instead of employing somebody who's just a trainee or a junior person starting in the business. And ultimately leads to a happier workforce, more satisfied workforce. And we see 80% of the apprentices remain with the employer after they complete their apprenticeship, which is a great outcome. And we would like to see through the work that we're doing also with us and other providers, and is progression from level to level. So if somebody's doing digital marketing, for example, they maybe start at level 3, they can progress to level 6, they can go to MBA staff or level 7 senior leader when they become leaders of their organizations through that apprenticeship journey.
When you're talking about, I think you mentioned, I can't remember the term you described it as, but you were talking about the happiness of the workforce, or in broad terms, I can't remember what you're saying.
Did I say satisfied workforce?
Satisfaction.
Yes, satisfaction.
One of the things we've definitely seen is the impact that apprentices have on the corporate culture, which is really difficult as a tangible item to measure in pounds and pence. I would be interested to know a bit more about whether that's common. Like everyone says, they improve the corporate culture.
There's things around workload. We work with employers on things like that as well, because obviously you have to be mindful of an apprentice's workload. Prioritization. You see that sometimes with employers who have never had an apprentice before. But we've also seen some employers that use the apprenticeship scheme to upskill some of the existing employees in terms of their management skills. So there may be somebody who's a star employee on the way to progression, but they've never managed anyone before. So they will say, as part of your development, you manage an apprentice. In some cases, they will say you do like a team lead and apprenticeship at the same time, and you manage, a new employee apprentice. Or you can do a short management development program and manage the apprentice. So this person is getting developed. They're very happy because they know they are on the way up in their business, and the business is recognizing that, and they're providing them support to become effective and good manager and potentially a good leader in the future. So there's a lot of these things happening that we see with employers, which, and majority of our apprentices seem to have very good feedback about the employers, the work conditions, etc., and how they see their future. I met one yesterday who is really excited. He just started a civil engineering degree apprenticeship, which is a 5-year program. And I said to him, so what's next for you? I know you're only 4 months into your apprenticeship. And he had everything planned. He said, when I finish this, I'll be an incorporated engineer. Then I want to do my master's to become a chartered engineer. And then I'm going to do this and I'll become a fellow of the Institute of Civil Engineers, and then hopefully I'll be a CEO of a company.
Nice.
So, yes, yeah. And he's only 18 years old. So, it's great to see that.
That's amazing. I was just going to add, in terms of the benefits and so on, I think we often hear about, aging populations, don't we, or aging workforces. And there's a lot of talk on the podcast I listen to about how we engage Gen Z and millennials and so on as customers, but also employees. And here you have these people in your business who have that voice, that is who they are. And even in my conversations with some of your apprentices, Joe, in the last couple of weeks, I feel like I've learned things from them and I've gained different perspectives, and that's so helpful for the running of a business.
Yes, and I think another thing that I forgot to mention, which is obviously the issues around the cost of living at the moment, the higher education loan system, etc. The degree apprenticeships and the higher apprenticeships can offer people from low economic backgrounds or barriers to going through the traditional route an opportunity to gain a really good qualification, experience, and potentially develop a very rewarding career as well. So that's a really good thing. And I'm sure Joe will add more about the impact of that on the well-being of everyone, the community, the social cohesion, stuff like that. So we see a lot of employers that have schemes in place where they go to schools and specifically if they fall within a certain postcode, because there's a large uptake of free school meals, for example, and they target these individuals and they see the ones who are high achievers potentially. Can we employ them as a degree apprentice in our company and bring them that way, which is obviously really great, because they will help their families through the income they earn. They're not going to have any debts to carry to the future, which is great additional benefit.
Sammy, that's a really good point. So it's something we do. We look at various deprivation indices across the UK, because we employ across the UK, and we do actively look to target schools and colleges with outreach programs where we can actually make them aware of pathways into financial journalism, financial marketing, and these are careers that often people haven't even considered much at the time. With degree apprenticeships or higher apprenticeships for us, obviously there is a commercial agenda, because the business, it has to be commercially viable for the business, but also one of our founding objectives of Rhotic was that there is a social impact and social mobility objective for the business. You often find, and it is often, because we found this from the people that we've met over the past 6 years, some of which we've employed, those people that have had to fight to achieve what they've achieved so far, and their energy that they bring into the sector or to the workplace manifests as an incredible employee. But you can't always capture that potential in grades alone. So it's really important that when you do these outreach programs, you talk about the importance of network, the importance of really thinking about the possibilities that exist, and not anchoring your ambition to what you have right now, anchoring it to what you want to be and what you want to achieve. Because it is totally possible as long as you know the right doors to knock on. But if you don't, that's ultimately the only thing that's holding you back.
Thank you.
And that's potentially, Joe, an area that we can potentially work with you on, where if you do meet someone and you think this person has the potential of being a star employee, but they don't have the academic requirements or whatever, we can potentially look at maybe a lower level apprenticeship, for example, business administration. They can prove themselves through that. It's got lower entry criteria and whatever, and so on. And then they progress from that to the digital marketer or whatever other apprenticeships that you need within the business. So, we can. I will use a term that the skills minister used. We can develop our own ladder of opportunity together, and get someone supported that way.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. So for anyone out there that's thinking, I really might like to do this, where would you recommend they go and have a look online, or what resources would you point them to?
So if it's an employer, I would suggest that they go into find an apprenticeship provider or find an apprenticeship. So there is two websites. One is the National Apprenticeship website. They can look at the details of what's an apprenticeship itself. It takes them through the details of the funding, the next steps, and then it will lead them into finding providers to work with. If they know what they want to get, then they can look at the Institute of Apprenticeships and Technical Education website, and they can search for the specific profession they're in or they're interested in. It will give them the apprenticeship standards available at the various levels if they're available, and they can look at that, because the apprenticeship standard document looks like a job description. So it's got duties, it's got skills, it's got typical job titles, etc. So they can look at that and compare it to what they have and whether they can provide these duties in the workplace. They don't have to happen at the beginning. They can progressively happen, but as long as the business can support that, then they can do the shortlisting around providers, etc. If it's an individual that's looking for apprenticeship, I will suggest that they should go and register in find an apprenticeship portal, which is the National Apprenticeship Service. Create a profile. I would highly recommend that they get someone else to review the profile before they submit it, because we see quite a lot of cases where there are mistakes, spelling mistakes, and obviously that puts businesses off of taking them forward. Accuracy is really important. Another thing that I think is worth mentioning, especially for individuals who are still in school, is that from September, UCAS is trialing applications for apprenticeships via UCAS. So from 24-25 academic year, because the sector wants and the government would like to raise the awareness of high-end degree apprenticeships and make them on a par of the normal degrees. And part of that is that UCAS will be advertising the jobs. People apply just like how they apply for a normal degree. It will come to the provider through the system, etc. So I would recommend people speak to their career advisors in schools as well about that.
Great, thank you. Okay. So finally, what advice would you give to somebody who's about to take the plunge and employ an apprentice?
I think, as I said, go in with the expectation that it's going to be a learning experience for you as well as the apprentice, because it is with the first time you do it, and you will continue to learn as you go through. But I'd say be prepared to be pleasantly surprised just how quick that team member becomes viable and a key member of your organisation, because I think there is a misapprehension that people expect apprentices to just sort of sit around and not be commercially generative in any way. And as long as you've done your due diligence in advance of an apprentice joining, that's just not the case. They get up to speed very, very quickly and become a meaningful and commercially important part of the team. And for us, I can't imagine the business without them now.
Yeah. And Sammy?
That's great. I agree with Joe. As I said, I employ apprentices as well, and without them, also, I can't see how we deliver the same service that we are delivering in the innovation that we've introduced in some of our processes. So I would say to any business that's looking into apprenticeships, the due diligence is really important for me, because if you don't work with the right provider, if you don't have the right apprentice, you will have a very bad experience. And obviously we don't want that to happen. So even when two of my apprentices, they are doing an apprenticeship that we don't offer internally, so I had to contract with another provider. And what we did is we went to the government website and I did what we said, where we looked at the best providers as rated by employers, and we brought them in and we said, we want to have two apprentices. Can you tell us what's different about you and your delivery? It was almost like a a tendering process that we did with interviewing, etc. And we went with the best that fit our ethos and organizational vision. So I would say to employers, don't be shy, be really tough in your selection process, and also engage with your local communities. There may be local schools as well. There could be some people who have done work experiences in certain areas, and also if you are able to offer work experience to people in the final year of school, for example, or the year before, that could be a route in for you to recruit someone, because I've seen it with employers where they've given someone work experience and then the following year they start with them as an apprentice because they're proven to them that they have got time commitment, they can work well as a team, etc. And that recruitment process becomes much more easier because you've got someone already, in the pipeline. And it's really great. I saw one apprentice like that who joined us to do a level 6 in architecture when he was 18, found it through a work placement that he did the year before. He's finished his level 6 and now he's in his level 7
Amazing.
Apprenticeship. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Well, this has been so helpful. Thank you so much for joining today. Are there any final words you'd like to share with the audience before we go?
I just think about my summary is I encourage every employer that hasn't done it so far to do their investigation and go for it. And just if you're thinking about it, just try it once and see what happens.
Yeah.
I agree with Joe. I think every employer, please consider it seriously, go for it. This is really the time to do it, even if you uncertain about the future, etc. But one of the ways that you can mitigate any impact or risk of the future is by continuing to try and grow and link with your customers and clients. And a more cost-effective way of doing it is by having apprentices. So please go out there, speak to your provider, speak to the National Apprenticeship Service, speak to local community, get apprentices in your business as soon as you can.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.